Many years ago, I came across a few lines in a book that I connected with. They were, "It's easy to judge, but you never know another person's heart, what gives them strength and what breaks them down." I have learned to listen more and speak less. The result has been eye-opening conversations and inspirational moments that I have shared with you right here. Hello and welcome to Crystal One-on-One. I am Crystal and I'm here for yet another amazing conversation. Today with an author, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, that's ARIHO Kamara. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having
He has
me.
2 books out. Before we even begin, I think it's so cool.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
We need to read more, number one, but for you to share your knowledge with everyone, that's amazing too.
Thank you.
So, how are you?
I am great. I'm in a good place.
You're in a good place.
I'm in a good place.
I like when people say that.
Yeah.
Because that means you've been through some ups and some downs and you're finding your
No, you're learning to work with what you have. I think so. That should put you in not in a comfort zone, but you're adaptable.
Okay.
And that's a good place to be. So, you're expecting the curveball, and when it comes, you deal with it. So, yeah.
So you're kind of open.
Exactly.
Open, but working with what you have.
Yes, working with what I have.
Okay, so did you know you'd be a writer one day?
No, that's interesting. I didn't think I would write, but
were you an avid reader?
Not really. Not really. It was much later on in life when I met people who really influenced me. People like the late Dr. Miles. I attended a couple of his seminars, and listening to him speak was just so, he became that, like father figure, so to speak. I've had a dad all my life, but he's like that guy who mentored me from a distance,
Okay.
And then, reading some of his materials and getting to know his life journey and the stuff that he'd been through and where he is, where he was, all that kind of inspired me to not to die with my story. But that was much later on in life, because he kept on saying something like, the wealthiest place on earth is the cemetery, because that's where you find all the stories that were not told, the songs that were not sung, all these inventions that never got out of people's minds. And that for me was kind of surreal. So I thought, there are certain things I'm not taking to the grave. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. So 2 books out, and I hope to throw out a few more.
A few more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you are Ugandan.
I am.
Born in Uganda.
Born in Tanzania.
Born in Tanzania.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were your parents working there at the time?
My parents were working there. It was towards the end of the Idi Amin era. So, so this is 78. So those who've read my book will know I describe myself as the island child. Well, when I was born, I was really my mom's toy, because she was a stay-at-home mom and she was bored, so they decided to have me.
Okay.
And so and then a few years later we came back to Uganda, and right from Tanzania we were plugged into Kabali. So I lived with my grandmom and my mom. My dad stayed on a bit longer to work. And so I've had...
So was it just you?
No, it was me and my brothers and sisters.
Okay, but they're all older.
They are older. I have one younger.
Okay.
The reason I call myself the island child is I am 5 years younger than my older sibling and 5 years older than my younger sibling.
So you just...
So I was in between.
In the middle.
Exactly. And I was too young to play with the older ones and too old to play with the younger ones. So I learned to become quite adaptable. So that's why I call myself the island child.
Okay.
Yes, I was in between. So I learned to build bridges to and from people older and younger. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Sounds a bit like middle child syndrome, but anyway. So you come back in Kabale.
Yes.
That's where you decided. Did
That
you go
is
to school
where.
there?
Yeah. My parents kind of thought we needed to get in touch with where we came from originally. So when I came in, I only spoke Swahili. So even communicating to my parents, to my grandparents, I needed an interpreter. So I needed like a cultural shift. So we plugged in, and they took all the Swahili out of me and reprogrammed me, and I got to speak Ruchiga and go to village schools and do normal village school kids things. And I must say, those were, looking back now, that was really, really fulfilling because it really rooted us. And yeah.
So you understood where home is, your
where
culture,
home is, what the culture
where
is,
your
what the
parents come
language is,
from.
where they come from. Yes.
Do you still speak Swahili? Did you
Well,
lose
now,
it?
not even to save my life. No, I was deprogrammed.
But you know,
Yes.
I have come to learn that some people are naturally gifted with languages and
Yeah.
some people aren't. And that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. It's not a problem. It's not a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so where did you go to school in Kabale?
Yeah, so I went to a school called Nyabirema Primary School, where I did 2 years. And later on, my late aunt thought, no, this guy couldn't be in a village school because, you know, it was beginning to get a bit competitive. But at the time, schools were not as not so nice as they are now, especially the government-run schools.
Yes,
so
yes.
you could kind of thrive anywhere because my older siblings stayed on and did their PLE in Nyabirema, and they did quite well and somehow found their way to Makere. But I was kind of transplanted again and brought to Nakasero, and then for the sake of convenience, my dad moved me to Buganda Road. So
Okay.
that's where I did 1 year in Nakasero Primary School, and then from P4 to P7 I was in Buganda Road.
Okay, I'm just going to take you back to school in Kabale. I'm
Yes.
sure when you came back, you said, number one, you didn't speak the language. Maybe there was even a difference in terms of
Lifestyle.
maybe a bit of privilege as well.
yeah.
Were you accepted by the other kids? Did you ever feel like you had to work extra hard?
I should say half and half. Reason being, I mean, we kind of, as a child, what I remember is, you know, we picked up on these things that were happening around us because, you know, you once in a while had conversations about how kind of privileged you were, but you were just really living your life. I remember very vividly my dad buying me a pair of shoes for school.
Kids those days didn't have
And
shoes.
yes, and I went to school with these shoes, and everyone took a turn
Wearing your shoes.
wearing my shoes just to walk in them, to have the experience of walking in the shoes. And that was the last day I took shoes to school. So I took them off and began to to go to school barefooted like the rest. So yeah, it was a case of fitting in, but also not conforming, but knowing who you are, but actually, you know, like not making others uncomfortable.
Wow.
Yeah,
They could have gone either way.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be kids who would wear the shoes to be like, I have shoes and
I
you
am
don't.
yes,
I
you know,
mean,
stuff like that. No, but yeah, it was different. We didn't feel like somehow we were too privileged. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
we
you
felt
come-
blessed, but not too privileged. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you came back to Kampala, Buganda Primary School. That's where you sat for your PLE.
That's where I sat for.
And
PLE.
then where did you go for A levels?
I went to
O-levels?
Namilyango College.
Namilyango.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm a fumbler.
The whole 6 years?
Yes, so I was there for 5 years. I didn't do quite well in my Form 5, and pride didn't let me stay on to redo S5. So I went to Makere High School.
Okay.
And that was also a turning point in my life because I met the headmaster at the time, a gentleman called Mr. Njagala, who really spoke sense into my life. You know, he said something that I remember. He said, "Young man, listen, your dad is not going to be around all your life to chaperone you around life. You need to know what you want and go out and get it."
Oh.
And I remember going back home, and these words were really ringing in my mind. And I told my mom, I said, "You know what? I have decided I'm going to redo S5." Because I had totally refused to do S5. I mean, how would my
So
peers...
you did S5 that year, then you failed terribly.
Yes.
What course were you doing then? What were you?
I was doing
combination?
Meg Art.
Okay, Meg Art.
Yes, yes. And math was not like my favorite subject. But I had to do it. Why? Because my older brother was great at math, and my dad thought I needed to be a mathematician.
Oh.
So I was one of those guys who was told to do stuff, and I actually went out and did it for some time. I lived in the shadow of my brother and older siblings who extremely successful people. So yeah, so
There's a bit of pressure. There's a bit of pressure.
there is pressure. Well, yeah, yeah. So
Was your dad also a mathematician?
no, he wasn't. My dad is a historian. Yeah,
I
so
think at the time maybe everyone thought sciences.
yeah, but I think somehow my older brother was kind of charting the course for me specifically, because well, I have three brothers. One is not with us. He passed on. The one that I was particularly, like, in his shadow, yeah, because the other one was so into sciences because he was an innovator. He would put apart stuff and put it back together. But the other one was an academic. He was, I think, what my dad saw as an ideal academic child. He's the kind of guy who said, I'm going to do this course because I want to achieve this, and he did that. And so he seemed to kind of chart the way. So my dad kept on saying, you need to jump on this rail and move.
That's a lot of pressure for most people. You need to be like your brother. You need to be like your sister.
Well,
it's a mistake as parents we make. All right, so what happened? You decided after this conversation that you were going to redo S5 at Macquarie High.
Yes.
Okay, did you change your combination?
I didn't change my combination. I changed my attitude.
Your attitude and your focus.
And my focus. Yes, and then I met these crazy, fun-loving people that love God. And they were out of trouble most of the time. They were not like me, so those were people who began to influence me to have a different perspective on life. And yeah, so I made friends with them, and one thing led to the other. I remember going, oops, I've been a week without a cigarette, and it was cool. And yeah, and then they invited me to their concerts. We started church hopping. For me, it was really for the fun and the fact that, we went around to these churches and dancing and getting all the applause and stuff. But something happened along the way, and, I began to find a bit of a center.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I saw that my relationships at home also changed, because I remember this one day I went to school supposedly for coaching, and I came back in a stupor.
Yeah.
And I phoned my dad home, and he was so cross with me, and he said, please leave my sight before I curse you. And yeah, and that kind of really scared me, because my dad was like the United Nations. He came in guns blazing, but this time he was not guns blazing. He used words, and I think words are powerful. You can beat a child all you want, but if you say something to them, it will stay with them for life. So those words kind of made me think, am I going to live with a curse all my life or stuff like that? And my dad didn't talk to me for a week.
It felt like he had given up on you.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, what's happening here? And yeah, but now hanging with these guys, relationships at home changed,
You're feeling better about yourself?
Yeah, there's something happening, something that I couldn't put my hands on, but it was good. So yeah, it was not too long. I did the walk of fame. Walked up to the front of the church and said, I want to give my life to Christ. Yeah, and well, having come from, the guy who was doing a few cigarettes and being notorious, it sent the school crazy. They're like, okay, he's got 1 week and he's back. and and look where we are now. Yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share of ins and outs, but I feel like that was the beginning of
this path that
of
you
this
were going
path
to take.
of really finding who I am, you know. That the big question everyone asks in life.
Yes.
Who am I?
Who am I? Why am I
here?
here?
And
True.
where am I going, you know?
And where am
So,
I going?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so finding the origin was like the beginning of
That's
it.
what set you on the
yes,
path.
Yes.
Okay, so you finished A levels
Yeah.
at Makerere?
At Makerere, did quite well. Unfortunate to get government sponsorship, but there was during my Form 6 vacation, I was really, I mean, I think from the kind of kid that I was, my dad wanted to keep tabs on me still, because now he thought, you know, this guy has been behaving because he's in school and stuff, but now he's got this whole long vacation. What's he going to do with himself? So he found me employment close to his office place.
Yeah.
And this was at a place called Access. Access used to do pre-press. Access was owned by John Cato.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I went into Access as a storekeeper because the lady who was doing storekeeping for them was going on maternity leave. And then within 3, 4, 5 months, I had fallen in love with graphic design.
Okay.
And it didn't take long, and I was doing design. And by the end...
This is self-taught.
This is self-taught, yeah. By the end of my vacation, I had a job.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a you know, a job. I was being paid, I think 150,000 at the time, which was not bad money.
Which was good money
so
then.
It was good money. And I decided to keep my job. So again, my dad said, you need to do BCom. That's why we stuck to Meg, right? I said, yeah, right, yeah. So I did BCom, but I did the external, BCom external. So we
you
only
could work and...
Exactly. So I've been working from 1998. So that's a lot of work experience, right?
Yes. What, 21 years? We did the math?
Yes. So yeah, so I kept my job and went to uni, and yeah, and this has been the story of my life, studying one thing and doing another thing. Yeah, and then so that's how it happened.
And I've heard you say before that, you know, for you personally, education didn't give you everything you needed.
Yeah.
And I think that's always a thing that confuses a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, your books are live your brand, stand out, be unique, you know, embrace your own uniqueness.
Yes.
And a lot of people struggle with that because the education system itself is kind of just panel beating you to be something.
Yes.
Follow instructions.
Yes.
Follow authority figures. Take the path that you are supposed to. So how did you find your way around that?
Well, let's say I think there's something called grit.
Grit.
And the Bachiga call it amario. You know, when you see a kid who is very daring, you know, they seem to be quote unquote stubborn. They're experimenting with stuff, and you know, can you just sit down? But they're so daring, and I think every child needs to be given that space to make mistakes, to experiment, to break a few things. Because I was reading somewhere that we operate at genius until the age of 7, and then societal conditioning kicks in. Yeah. So it's how do you maintain that curiosity and the ability to dare to do the things that people are saying you can't do or you shouldn't be doing. So for me, I think in a way, much as I found Christ earlier on in my life, it didn't take away the fact that I was still curious and adventurous, and I think I still am that kind of person. At least I try to make deliberately remain curious. So that's partly what has, informed my choices to date, and deciding to stand out.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes a bit of work.
But is it really possible for everyone to stand out?
It is, because everyone has got unique DNA. I mean, you're designed to stand out. Now, like you said, education is trying to conform us into something that we are not. So you find, going through school, there are some people who are labeled retards, or, there was a very derogatory word used when they called you a zonto.
Oh man, zonto.
This one is a zonto.
Like you're kind of like a zombie.
Like, yeah, like, you can't, you
can't take
yeah,
anything,
some wires are loose, but it's because people are wired differently. And when you begin to deal with individuals, I think I had someone say this quote, I don't quite remember who said, everyone is lovable if only you listen to their story. So everyone is unique, and their uniqueness and the things that make them absolutely lovable and different from everyone else you've seen is only brought out when they embrace it and serve it to the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
sounds well and good. I know a lot of people be like, oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
But how? You see,
Yeah.
but how do you do that?
You just be.
Especially in a society where you're saying, people say you can't do this or you can't do that, like you said, or you have expectations from the people around you or your parents. Because being the rebel is not always as glamorous as it looks at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do people have to do to find that uniqueness?
I think it's something that happens in environments. If you get into environments that help feed those areas everyone is trying to suppress, then they eventually thrive.
Okay.
I think, yeah, environments are key. So if you're in an environment that is extremely toxic, where everyone is telling you you can't, you shouldn't, please conform, then I think you only do yourself a favor if you can step away from those environments.